Hello, everybody. So I said I was going to go through some of these Q magazines, and it's actually taken me a little while to figure out how to film something that kind of works. But here's what we're going to go with. It is December 1996, and alongside this, I'm going to post the December 1996 John Peel Festive 50, which is actually really different to the music that's being reviewed in Q magazine, which I find really interesting because I started reading Q in the 90s when it was probably associated far more with what was very popular with slightly younger people. You can actually see I've got my Q magazines piled up, and underneath here I've got like a late 90s version of Q, and it's talking about, okay, you've got Pink Floyd there, but Texas and Cast, and there's Catatonia on the cover, who were all very popular at the time. um but in 1986, it looks like Q had a much older readership, and it looked like they were far more serious music people. So if I'd been a teenager in 1986, I don't know if I would have read this. In fact, I was looking stuff up on the internet, and one place said this was specifically targeted at men aged 30 to 50. Whereas by the 90s, I was reading Q magazine as somebody in their mid teens, which is a very, very different demographic. But anyway, let's have a look in here because there's so much stuff going on, and so much conversation on social media about, what people used to say, what people used to talk about, who was big at this point. And I think this is probably a bit different to what people are saying. And I want to give a special little shout out because I know the Pet Shop Boys, I've started to see them coming up on social media again. I guess they're doing some stuff this year. And we have the young Pet Shop Boys down here, and we're going to find out a bit about them. Okay, so 1986, Bruce Springsteen was touring. Okay. Um, we've got our contents page here. We are going to learn about, I don't know. I don't even know who some of these people are. I know who some of them are. Okay. Julie Birchill, of course, I believe in hanging. Ouch. I would say that's aged poorly, but it probably wasn't popular at the time. We've got something on Mickey Rourke. We've got Debbie Harry from Blondie. She's been around for ages. George Lucas not getting a good review. What I'm finding interesting is as we're going to go through these Q magazines, there's going to be a lot of hot takes, which history proved very, very wrong. um, okay. We've got David Byrne, right? I have separately, as part of my music course, actually been reading How Music Works by David Byrne, which I would recommend it to you. But if you are studying or have studied music at all, you've probably already been recommended that book. And it's one of those books that you can get from the table in the middle of rough trade if you feel so inclined. So we won't worry too much about Julie Birchill because I'm probably going to get like immediately banned if we do this. But check out the adverts in here. I love this. Why not get an American Express credit card so that you can buy more vinyl? That seems like a totally legitimate thing to do. I am on board with that advert. Let's buy loads of vinyl on credit. That's absolutely fine. Um, we've got something with Paul Young and Ian Cooley. I do not know much about Ian Cooley. Paul Young was huge. I don't know what happened to him. I'm not going to. I think I might scan this if you actually want to read some of these articles. If they're not already on an archive, maybe I'll create one if it doesn't create any copyright issues. I don't know. So, little bit about Mickey Rourke going on there. Very young Mickey Rourke. Oh, the gorgeous Debbie Harry looking finally 80s. So she is back right now. She's come back several times. We love Debbie Harry. Absolutely fantastic. Um, right, Tower Records. If you ever went to London, Tower Records is obviously the big place to be. Look at what's big, though. Why don't you give a gift of the Communards or Richard Clayderman or the Kinks? These are kind of old, even in 1986. Now, here's what I wanted to get onto. There's some really serious articles in here, and this is an article about Michael Powell, um, who was 81 at this time, and an autobiography had come out or was coming out. What really struck me about this is I teach in my day job and I teach young adults. So, young men and women who are over 18, normally around about 20 years old, 20 to 25. And if I were to give those young adults a worksheet with that amount of black and white text, there would be a riot. I would have people telling me you can't expect me to read all of that. In 1986, people were purchasing and reading this voluntarily. Okay. I just wanna throw that out there as an interesting social development. The other thing that's in here is that this is not just music, right? There are quite a few book reviews in here. And when you get to the reviews at the back, there are reviews of the books that are coming out at the moment. But yeah, there's an article here about some of the books about music that are coming out. I'm going to go a little bit further. Has George Lucas lost his touch? I think history tells us perhaps not. And to be fair, I really like Labyrinth. People of my generation saw Labyrinth as kids, and that is now like a kind of infamous cult happy movie. Although I appreciate if you were an adult at the time, that was probably not something you wanted to see. Oh, video piracy is theft. So we have an article about video piracy. Yeah, some things never change. Again, we've got a really great article here. And this one I also found really interesting because this is about a guy, Carlos Olms, right? And he was working in Polygram, and he was working on remastering stuff for CD. So classic albums that had originally been issued on vinyl, I guess tape or I don't know. Um, but he's at this time, people were moving from vinyl to CD. Now, from what I remember, I was too young to be buying any music formats at that time, but my family had vinyl. I'd never seen a CD player. There were no CDs in my local record shop. It was probably very different if you went to a city like London, but certainly in my rural hometown, in 1986, I had zero idea what a CD even was. You saw them and laser discs and stuff like that on Tomorrow's World, but they were not something that people had adopted yet. Certainly not, in the kinds of places that I grew up. But clearly they were committing to remastering stuff for CD. And this is really interesting because at the moment we have this huge vinyl revival. People are really into buying vinyl for the sound quality. And there's quite a lot of references throughout this issue of Q, where we're talking about how CDs are so great and so much better quality. So I think that's a really interesting change in perspective. So yeah, I'll scroll forward. Look at this fantastic, why don't you buy a Technics compact disc player for music lovers? Wow. They are really investing in this. Oh, crikey. David Burns does not feel like acting. That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to. Right then. let's scroll through. There's a lot of magazine here. We're getting our £2 worth. We've got an interview of the fantastic Little Richard. Okay, again, Little Richard had been around for ages by this point. Q Mail. Sometimes these are funny. Not seeing too much funny here off the top. The Pet Shop Boys. Yeah, we're not editing our speech here very well, are we? Okay. So yeah, I'm liking this. Here's what really this made me laugh. Okay, a CD for the price of an album? No, no, really? So yeah, a compact disc, and it's only going to cost us £5.99, which is an insane amount of money in 1986. The world's first CD for the price of a black disc, and this is a joint venture by Q Magazine and Virgin Records. And what we'll see later on is that I actually have a fine little collection of Q CDs, because they actually started doing compilation CDs on the cover, and I have tons of these things. Robert Palmer, we're seeing everybody's opinions here. We'll get to the reviews later. Here's our humorous Q charts. But again, kind of interesting, because top 10 compact discs are people like Tina Turner, Lionel Richie. Okay, Madonna and Whitney Houston are not, probably not big. Surprises. We've got least popular video rentals at the Fulham Video Centre. Lovely. Mantango Fungus of Terror. I kind of want to watch that. Can we find that? I don't know. Sci-fi and fantasy bestsellers from the Forbidden Planet bookshop. And we've got Football by Niven and Pornell, whoever that is. Number 5, The Light Fantastic, Terry Pratchett. I was a huge Terry Pratchett fan. If you have not read this, you absolutely should go read some Terry Pratchett. I think a lot of my students have no idea who that is now. We've got The Man Whose Teeth Were All Exactly Alike by Philip K. Dick. Love Philip K. Dick. And The Fantastic Neuromancer by William Gibson. If you're into cyberpunk, William Gibson that's kind of where it all started. You should read some William Gibson. If you're one of these girlies building cyber decks, stuff like this, you're going to love William Dixon William Gibson, if you haven't already come across him. Oh my goodness. The rise and fall of Reginald Dwight. I think Elton John has risen and fallen numerous times by this point. Let's not go there. Oh, crikey. But, do we see these photographs being recirculated very often? Oh, there's a lot of Elton John here. Let's just take a moment again. Another advert. Why don't you get a load of blank videotapes for Christmas? Absolutely fantastic. Oh yeah, perfume adverts. For years, perfume adverts were always like this sort of slightly muscular naked man shot in black and white. And this made me giggle, because this perfume is actually called Man in Grey. Yeah. Now, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to share a John Peel Festive 50. There's a massive article. Why is he still in the job? John Peel, the only original Radio 1 DJ left after 19 years. Oh, he stayed a lot longer than 19 years, my friends. And he survived because he is awesome and a national treasure. And like I say, it's within my teenage years that you listen to the John Peel show and you knew about John Peel, because this is where you find out about the really cool new music that perhaps isn't charting, that perhaps isn't getting the really good reviews, but this guy was actually going through tapes and pushing bands that he genuinely believed in. And it was even a thing, when I was like playing guitar in my teens that, you know, when you record your demo, one of the things you might want to do is send your demo tape to John Peel. And apparently he did used to listen to them all. He treated it like a full-time job. I don't know how he did this, but yeah, apparently he did. See, lots of stuff at home with John Peel. Fantastic. The guy was a legend. Still is. Yeah, what's the thing with taking pictures of people in the bath? I will never understand this. So yeah, I think I'm going to move on quite quickly now. We've got a whole bunch of this. Genesis, yeah, okay, they existed. They were huge. Really not my deal. The Mission, let's just have a special mention for any band who advertise their new album as Beats Taking Drugs. What a marvelous advertising campaign. Now, a lot of people at the moment are talking about getting offline and discovering music organically. And I remember a pre-internet era, and I actually missed loads of great music and loads of great films and books and other stuff, because it's actually incredibly difficult to discover anything organically. If you live in London, or if you live in a really big city that's got a great music scene and a great cultural scene, it's a lot easier. But if you are not in that area, it's incredibly challenging. And there were still localized pulls. I was living in Scunthorpe at the time, and Scunthorpe very famously had a metal scene. There's a great Jasper Carrot sketch where he talks about playing Scunthorpe Baths Hall and it's all metalers. It's totally true, by the way. It's like you can listen to that and just think, yeah, absolutely. I was not there, but 10 years later, that's absolutely what all Scunthorpe teens were like. I totally believe it. So you actually relied on the music press to find new music, and the music press were brutal. So that meant that quite often I would read a terrible review of an album or of a band, and I simply wouldn't go out and buy it, because at this point music is still quite expensive, you know. I have to save up a few weeks' pocket money, or I have to spend my birthday book voucher getting an album. This is not something, you know, I can't buy music in vast amounts. So I actually missed out on some iconic albums purely because they got terrible reviews. And I also bought some absolute dud albums. I won't name names. There is an album I absolutely detest by people who were quite honest about the fact they'd been plucked from school and couldn't actually play their instruments. As in, the bass player was somebody's girlfriend who had literally been taught how to play 3 notes on the way to the recording studio or something daft like that. But they were like related to somebody at a magazine. I don't know what happened. And they got pushed. They got glistening reviews. So I have that album, and I missed out on some of the iconic albums of that year. So that's the power that the music press had. In my music history course, they're talking a lot about the power that radio had in the States. In America, it was all about radio and to some extent TV. That really influenced how music developed, how rock music, rock and pop developed over there since since the 50s. In Britain, we did have radio, but it's mainly BBC radio. There were the pirate stations. If you ever watch films like The Boat That Rocked, you know, stuff like that. But it was mainly the press. We had MTV, but nobody had satellite TV unless you were really rich. So nobody watched MTV. It was the press had a huge amount of power until very, very late on. So yeah, we're going to go through this. And I'm seeing some people I recognise. We've got the Cocteau Twins down there. We've got Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Oh, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Um, got Debbie Harry again, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper has become a sad old parody of himself. This was 1986, my friends. Alice Cooper is a great deal older now, and we love him. There's the Damned down there, Dr. Feelgood. You can see this is not all new music. So some of this is music that would have been considered fairly old at the time. Okay, we've got Europe, the Final Countdown. Oh, Falco. Oh my goodness, this is a trip. But we've got, you can see there's loads of reviews. This isn't just a few. They have reviewed literally, I think everything, well, not everything that came out that month, but you know, must be a pretty good chunk there. Okay, so, oh, One Nation Under Bruce, we've got new LPs as well as the new singles. What else? Oh, Paul Young. We've got, this is actually a separate section reviewing re-releases. So Aretha Franklin is being re-released, Kate Bush, John Lennon. And I think that's quite nice because we could probably really do with that because there's so many re-releases coming out at the moment. They actually review classical albums. And that is something that did not happen later on. And again, I find that quite interesting. As a younger person, if you're into music, why wouldn't you be into classical music? That makes perfect sense. And then we have reviews of books, and this is not something I see anymore. So you can actually find out what books are coming out at the moment. Now, I know somebody who's a writer. They don't like me talking about them online. They're very offline. And they tell me quite a lot. At the moment, if you're writing books, it's dominated by sort of the what Ottakers and Blackwell's stock, and it's really dominated by the Richard and Judy book club. I don't watch this stuff. That may have changed now, but for a long time it was. So that means the obviously those kinds of places stock particular types of book. There's a lot of chick lit. There's a lot of you know stuff that I don't know, the kinds of people who watch Richard and Judy are going to buy. Those people are not me. Whereas here we've got books that you might conceivably want to read, which is kind of different. I think literature's kind of really suffered. I know there's this big thing about young men in particular don't read, and I mean, why would they read the Richard and Judy book club? I don't want to read the Richard and Judy book club. It sucks. So, you know, I think we should bring this back. And then, of course, we've got reviews of films as well, so that you know what to purchase or what to rent out from your local Blockbuster or equivalent. When Friday rolls around. We've got Labyrinth, Critters. Oh my god, this is a classic year. Wow. So we'll still go through there. Little quiz at the back, and that is our little travel through December 1986. Don't forget to book for the Eurythmics, Bob Geldof, and Van Morrison. Take care. Unfortunately, this is the only 80s copy of Q I have. So we will then be taking a little leap forward to the early 90s in our next one. But I hope you enjoyed 1986. Oh God, the police. I'll leave you with Sting. Goodbye.